Hey everyone, and welcome to this special edition of the Patty Brennan Show. I am Patty Brennan's daughter, as you can probably tell. My name is Carrie Brennan, and I'm so excited to be here today with my mom to talk to her a little bit about some of the stories leading up to where she is today, writing this book, and all that good stuff. So without further ado, Mom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carrie. I have no idea what to expect today. So you just said, show up, Mom, and I'll ask you a bunch of questions. So here I am.
Yeah. And I'm so excited, and I know that it's kind of hard because you have to let go. There were a couple times this week my mom was like, "Hey, can you send me the questions? You mind sending me the questions? I got to know what I want to say."
Right.
And I said, "You already have the answers." So I'm going to read your bio.
Oh, boy.
Okay. So, Patty Brennan is a globally recognized financial advisor known for her comprehensive services and unwavering commitment to her clients and community. In 1990, she founded Key Financial, growing the firm to manage over $2 billion with a B. With a background in nursing from Georgetown University, Patty brings compassion to her work and strives to help clients feel secure and cared for like family. Patty's ability to communicate complex financial concepts in understandable terms has earned her the recognition from Forbes, the Financial Times, and Barron's as one of the top advisors in America for nearly 2 decades. She serves on the boards of various institutions and nonprofits and is a sought-after speaker at conferences throughout America and abroad.
Who is that lady? I have no idea.
We're gonna find out today.
Okay.
Okay, so obviously, let's just, call it out. That is an insane bio. That's very impressive.
It's pretty crazy to hear it myself. I will tell you that I just wake up every day like everybody else. I don't, I'm Patty Brennan from Westchester, Pennsylvania, mom of 4, wife of Ed Brennan, and I get to do these things.
I think there is a lot more under the surface happening, and that's exactly what we're kind of uncovered today.
Okay.
So as I was coming up with these questions, I thought, wouldn't it be cool, in your favorite terms,
my
if I
favorite term.
reached out to people in your life to ask these questions about you?
You're going to make me cry.
I haven't even started.
Don't do this.
Okay, so the first question that I had was, what was Patty Brennan like as a kid?
Very ugly.
Well, you don't
homely.
get to answer first, okay?
I was really tough to love.
Okay, you don't get to answer. This is from your older sister, Leslie. When I think of Pat as a kid, I see a 5-year-old little girl outside in her Speedo. She has, drumroll please, a pixie haircut, flat, straight hair. She has 2 buck teeth. Her hands are on her hips, and she means business. Her hands stayed on her hips for many years. Patty was certainly determined. But one day, she took her hands off her hips and opened her heart. And this is what really got me when I read this morning. She said, "My little sister is very successful, and I'm proud of her, and I'm happy for her. But the thing I'm most proud of her for is her caring ways and her open heart." That's Leslie. Uncle Tim said, "Patty was an outlier of sorts. She was the 4th. I'm pretty sure you were the 5th.
I was 5th.
Okay.
Okay, Tim. You can't count or beans.
Yeah, she was 4th of 7 children, and some of us were academic, others were not, but Patty sat in the middle. She's very athletic and I would say competitive, but what really strikes me about my sister is here's a girl who didn't do well in chemistry in high school, but somehow ended up graduating from Georgetown with a 4.0. So something switched in her head." That is my first question. You're a CEO, Forbes top advisor, so successful, and yet as a kid, it didn't seem like you were, an outlier or someone that was exceptional. Can you tell me a little bit about what your version of yourself is like as a kid and what switched?
You know, it's really, I've never been asked that question before. I don't really know. I certainly did fly under the radar as Tim, the fifth of 7 children. I was not a diver, as you know. You know, most of the kids in our family were divers, national, Olympics, the whole bit.
Yeah.
I couldn't dive worth anything. So, you know, I guess I just figured, okay, I got to find my own way and chart my own future.
You said fly under the radar, and you mentioned not knowing really what your thing was. You know, your brothers and sisters had diving, and you kind of didn't. This is from your little sister, Mary. She said, what Patty was like as a kid. Well, sharing a room with her gives you a lot of insight. Pigtails, buck teeth, shorts that pulled up to her chin,
Those
a total
damn
mismatch.
buck teeth.
The
I'm
buck
telling
teeth.
you,
I mean,
buck
that's
teeth,
2 for 3.
big time.
Must have been big. She said, I think Patty was 11, maybe 12, when she stood in front of the mirror with 3x5 index cards and a lot of affirmations and visions that she had for her life. Some of them were, when I grow up, I'm going to marry a really nice guy and have a family. When I grow up, I'm going to be a great athlete. When I grow up, I'm going to be a millionaire. After every statement, she looked in the mirror and nodded her head as if it was already done. This was when you were 12. And of course, we all know years later, her visualization exercise has been accomplished. She said, bottom line, she did the things from a mindset and a visualization perspective at a young age. She put in the work privately when no one was watching. And so that's what I think is so interesting. My question to you is, where do you get the audacity as an 11-year-old to do affirmations as if you are this person?
Well, you know, it's really interesting because you say that and it came from within. But I will tell you that the one thing that our dad did do is encourage us to read. So I was reading these crazy books. And, you know, there was, you know, a guy named Dale Carnegie way back when,
Yes,
who wrote a couple of books, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I was reading these books. And what was wild was Dad actually gave us a scholarship if we would read these books, take the course. I didn't take the course, but I read all of the books, and I started to really kind of take that, to really believe it and start doing the things that was recommended in the books. I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
I didn't have anybody out there coaching me.
Yeah.
You know?
So that was your thing.
Yeah, I was just reading books and doing the things that the book said work.
Yeah.
And without questioning it.
That's so interesting. That is really fascinating to me. So moving along in your life, you went to Radnor High School, ended up going to Georgetown. Your senior year at Georgetown, you're all set to become a nurse, right, and to get your nursing degree. And you took a class the very last semester of your senior year. Can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like?
Well, the class was a financial planning class. Way back then, their certified financial planners really didn't exist. Most people in the industry were kind of insurance salespeople or stockbrokers. And this class was so good. It took 4 years to get into the course, and I just loved it. I thought, wow, I didn't know that people really did this for a living.
Yeah.
You know, going back to how we grew up. You know, again, 7 kids. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. Dad worked, you know, at IBM. He was a really smart guy, went to Wharton himself. And it's interesting because it was hard for them. They lived paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was chaotic when Mom and Dad fought. It wasn't about who was going to go where because everybody was going to diving practice.
Yeah.
But it was really more about money. And,
Yeah.
you know, it does make a child grow up feeling financially insecure.
Yeah.
Are we going to lose our house? You know, they would always be worried.
Yeah.
And so when I took this course, I thought, wouldn't this be cool if I could learn more about this? Maybe I'll learn how to be financially secure also. But I had already made the commitment to nursing. I had studied abroad, did midwifery over in England. It was the coolest thing in the world. So I took my boards, worked, in oncology for about a year, and then got promoted to the ICU.
God, that's just the timing of that is like I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh my God, you were so close. And yet
it planted a seed in me, and
Right.
that was okay because it just was a subconscious thing like, wow. And using your term, wouldn't it be cool?
Right.
Wouldn't it be cool to
Well, that's
learn
your
more
term.
about this? So I
Yeah.
decided to take classes
Right.
on my own.
So when you were working at Lankenau Hospital, you've told me this. This is one of my favorite stories, honestly. You started to just do people's taxes for fun, right?
Yeah, so here's how that came about.
Yeah.
First, I had to learn how to do taxes, right? I wasn't going to
Yeah.
offer to do something that I didn't know how to do myself. And that's where, I learned on my own. My dad taught me how to do tax returns. I was living at home. They charged me rent. I figured, oh, I'm not paying my mom and dad. I'm just going to go out and get my own place. Got a condo, had renters, learned how to do Schedule E's, et cetera, et cetera. And I even went through an audit when I was like 23 years old. It was wild. Anyway, long story short, I was sitting at the bedside next to a patient, and a resident came over, and I was friends with this resident, and he was kind of moaning. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were both exhausted. He's like, oh, I got to do my taxes. It was like April, whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I love doing taxes. He's like, what are you talking about, Patty? I said, yeah, it's kind of like a puzzle. And then I started to ask him questions, kind of like what we do today. Sometimes when you ask the right questions, it's really interesting what bubbles up. So by the end of the conversation, he's like, wow, I didn't know all these things. I said, you know what? Give me your stuff. Let me fill out your taxes for you.
Yeah.
I'm not an accountant. I told him all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, one thing led to another. And he said, this is amazing, because he got money back on his tax return because he didn't know that he should be deducting certain things. And so one thing led to another, and people sort of wandered over and said, I hear you do taxes, Patty.
Yeah.
How much do you charge?
Yeah.
I'm like, charge? I don't charge anything. Are you
Right.
kidding me? So that's really how it started. I did it for fun. I did it to learn. I did it to help the people
Yeah.
that I knew and cared about.
Yeah, what stands out to me is that you got excited at the idea that he was getting back more money.
I loved it.
It was like a game to you. And you're
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, that's what I want.
It was a game, and
Yeah.
it made a difference in his life.
Yeah.
Here, this guy was a struggling resident, working night and day, moonlighting the whole bit.
Yeah.
And to get that money back on his taxes was really cool. It was liberating for him, and it was really neat to see.
Yeah, yeah. So you're in your nursing career, you're working in the ICU, and one day you're reading the newspaper and you find an ad in the newspaper from RTD Financial to be a financial planner.
Well, here's the deal. Actually, I went to your dad and said, if I could do it all over again, this is what I'd really like to do.
Right.
And in his infinite wisdom, he said, you know what, why don't you just give him a call? You're not going to get the job.
Oh, right. So it was him who read the paper and saw the ad in the paper.
Yeah, you know what? All through our lives, your dad believed in me. He saw something, and he always encouraged me and helped.
Yeah.
Like that divide and conquer thing, it works.
Yeah. So a lot of people have, I feel like it's such a relatable thing that everyone in their job, I'm not going to speak for myself, but I know of a lot of people where they're in their job and they're like, man, I wish I could just quit my job and go to another job and do this. But very few people actually take action and actually do the thing. What made you actually take the action to do it?
As you asked that question, there could have been several catalysts. I had a patient in the ICU that was really, really hard for me to get away from. It was a young boy, 16 years old, in a car accident. I became really close to the family. I won't bore you with the details.
No, please do. Please do. Actually, I haven't heard the story in a while, so.
So it was a 16-year-old boy who was in a really bad car accident, and he was in a coma. I got to know the family really well. I was there when he was brought in, got him all situated, brought the family in, and they would come in every single day. And I happened to be assigned to them because they did try to keep that consistency in terms of the patients that we took care of. And in the process, the family would come in. They would ask, what should they do? He was not responsive. And to make a long story, I mean, they would bring in tapes, and I would just say, just talk to him.
Yeah.
We don't know what he can hear or not hear. Just talk to him. Tell him how you feel. Bring stuff in from the house. Bring in your stuff. Let him smell you. Let him feel you, your presence. And it was just a beautiful thing to watch this family.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Anyway. The head nurse came to me one day and said, Patty, we need to take you off this case because the family's getting too close to you and they don't want anybody else taking care of their son. And so they moved me to a different part of the hospital. And I was like, wait a minute, is this what we're supposed to do? This is who we are. We take care of the family. We take care of the patient. And I just didn't understand that the family was really upset about that decision also. And so they decided to move their son to a completely different hospital. So my head nurse came to me and said what their decision was and asked if I would be willing to travel in the ambulance with them. Now, I got to tell you, this boy was really sick. He had trees of IVs. He was on a ventilator. He was on all this medical equipment. And it was really intimidating for me to accept that responsibility. But I figured, you know what? If not me, then who?
Right.
So I showed up the morning that we were supposed to go. And I showed up early because you know me, I just really want to be prepared. So it was like 5:30 in the morning. I was doing my assessment and I went over to his bedside and he had blown his pupils and he wasn't doing the things that he was doing before. I won't get into the medical details, but he was flaccid. Whereas before, there are certain stages with the brain where it's called decerebration when it's almost like a spasm. But it's a good sign that the brain is still doing something.
Yeah.
This time he wasn't doing anything. So I knew. Called the doctor called the family. And then I talked to the mom and I said, I'm here. I'll get him ready because they decided that they would let him go. And I talked to the mom and I said, I'm here. I'll get him ready. Come on in whenever you want. The whole thing. And she said, we're not coming in. We just don't want to be. We want to remember him as we did. But we want you to be there. I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah.
And so I sat at his bedside and I disconnected the ventilator and took out all the lines and sat there until the last heartbeat. And I thought, this is bullshit. This should not have happened. And I just thought, you know what? The fact that I was taken off the case, et cetera, of course they've got their protocol, all this crap. And that's the thing. I thought, screw the protocol. These are people.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing, and I think, that made me think. It made me think a lot. And it probably changed the way I approach pretty much everything, Cara.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you're a ICU nurse, a financial planner, selling office furniture like your dad does. Put your heart into it. Put your heart into it. Understand that whatever you're doing, you're helping people.
Yeah.
It's not about the furniture. It's not about the IVs. It's not about the assessment. And by God, it's not about the money. Mm-hmm. It's about people. Mm-hmm. What's important.
Wow. Do you remember what his name was?
Oh, yeah. I can't say it because...
Oh, right. Duh. HIPAA.
These people are local, and obviously, I can't keep in touch with these people, but it really did change my life.
Yeah, I can tell. It reminds me of like the seeds, like you're getting seeds planted. And I think, and this is kind of just, kind of woo-woo, whatever, but I feel like he had a lot to do with the different phases of your life and kind of leading you in your path.
I don't want to get weird on you, but I think about angels in our lives.
Yeah.
And that boy was an angel in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
He kind of, it's hard to leave something that you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
right? I mean, I was comfortable. I had a lot of friends.
Yeah.
It was really it's a great
It was
profession.
a great setup. When did this happen?
I don't even remember in
Was
terms of the
was
timeline.
Yeah, okay, that's okay.
There were lots of things as a nurse that affected me. You know, I think about a 4-year-old little girl, beautiful eyes,
Yeah.
who drowned in a pool. I think about the HIV patients and what they suffered with and how they felt so isolated and shamed. And, you know,
It affects you.
it does affect you.
So, switching gears here just a little bit. You worked at Lankenau for 5 years.
Yeah, 4 or 5, yeah.
4 or 5 years. And because of these kind of lots of different things that we talked about, you decided, I'm going to pursue this dream and I'm going to be a financial planner.
To be honest with you, I didn't accept that position. I didn't have this idea that I was going to build a $2.5 billion company at all. In the beginning of the years, your dad, we were just trying to survive.
But before that, like, so so you're working at Lankenau, right? You had this moment of like, I'm going to go after this interview, right? I'm going to take this job. That's a pretty big leap of faith, right?
Oh, yeah. It was a huge leap of faith. In fact, I will tell you that when I was leaving, they had a party for me. And I'll never forget this. I was in the ladies' room and I was in the stall. I mean, it's probably TMI, but it is what it is. And 2 of the other nurses who I really respected came in and they were chit-chatting, talking at the sink. And the one said to the other, "Do you believe she's going to be a financial advisor?" And the other one said, "Yeah, you just wait. She'll be back in 6 months."
Oh, my God.
And I got to tell you, Carrie,
Oh, my God.
it's a good thing that the bowl isn't so big because I wanted to fall into that toilet.
yeah.
I was so mortified and embarrassed. I'm thinking, oh, my God, who do I think I am? What am I doing?
And like, I'm sure there must have been this, like, when you were leaving, when you had this party, I'm sure there's this excitement, though, right? Aside from that, there was this, like, I'm going and I'm doing the thing, right? Just like when you start anything in life, it's exciting. And the next 5 years that you're working with at RTD were probably some of the most challenging years, I think, in your entire life. So on top of doing this thing, and what I think is so inspiring is that so many people, it's like, yes, when you can go out and decide to start the business and this and that, and then shit hits the fan, and that's when it gets real. This is something that I've learned recently when I really kind of sat down to hammer out your timeline and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about, you started working at RTD in 1985-ish. And then 2 years later, 1987, the crash of 1987 happens in October. 3 months after that, in 1988, Michael's born. So can you tell me a little bit about what the crash of 87 meant to you?
Well, I think I had just become a CFP.
Okay.
We were doing what we do today, sort of, not nearly as comprehensive, but pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I still didn't really know what I was doing because fortunately I was with a firm and I relied on other people in the firm to teach me along the way. Then the crash occurred, and I'll never forget the day that it happened because we were all looking up at the TV, and the principal of the firm, Roy, looked over to me, and our jaws were, like, how can this happen? We were just trying to think about the implications. And he said, "Patty, this experience, what you will experience in the next few years as we help our clients get through this period, it will be the best training ground you could possibly ever have."
Wow. That's wild.
He was right. Now, it was a very different environment back then, and the reason it was so difficult is that it was really commission-oriented. There was no such thing as a salary. The crash of 87 led to a severe downturn just from an economic perspective. Your dad lost his job. We had just bought a house. In fact, when we bought the house, we had to put a down payment. Of course, it was all in the stock market. We lost, 30% of it, just like that. So we had to borrow money from friends and family. Otherwise, we were going to lose the entire down payment. So we were able to get in, but we had the big mortgage. And then your dad lost his job.
See, this is a crazy dichotomy because you're trying to be this financial planner for people, and then shit is hitting the fan. Excuse my French. Stuff is hitting the fan in your career and your professional life, and you're expected to be this caregiver to people like that. That's really crazy to me. I have a really dumb question, but if the markets are crashing and things are really going awry, wouldn't people want to work with a financial planner more than ever? Wouldn't that be better for you?
Well, it's really interesting. Actually, yes and no, because what happens is people panic and they isolate. And, typically the best thing that people can do is add to their portfolios, invest more.
Right.
Now, that's on the one side. On the other side, keep in mind the business model was different than it is right now.
Yeah.
And we were all commissioned, so we were selling mutual funds. We were selling life insurance. And so people had zero interest. So as a result, and honestly, we were cold calling. Anything.
Yeah.
Anything to, meet with people and convince them that this is a good thing for them. Because at the time, the world was about to end.
It was kind of like selling corporate real estate in COVID, right? Suddenly there's just
nobody's
need for
going
it.
to the office. Nobody is.
Yes. No one's
interested.
buying this stuff. So that is the fall, right, of 87.
Went all the way out. It lasted for a while because people get PTSD and they're like, oh, I'm never going through that again.
I heard on ChatGPT, I punched it in chat and I was like, how long did it realistically take to fully recover? And it said 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So January, Michael's born.
Yeah, here we are. We're supposed to be happy, 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 joy, joy. We've got a brand new house, a beautiful newborn. Your dad lost his job.
Yeah.
And we have all these wonderful things happening on the one hand and zero income, nothing to fall back on. Mm-hmm. It was really scary. Debt was increasing.
So in response to all of these stressors, you did something that I honestly don't think my pride would have been able to do. You went back to nursing.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple questions about this. But first, can you explain to the listeners what a normal schedule was like for you in a week?
So basically, on a weekly basis, I would drive into Philadelphia. There were no car phones or cell phones back then. So I would drive into Philly to be, quote unquote, by that time I was vice president, right? And to do what, I was doing, helping clients, trying to drum up business, et cetera. And we had no cash flow, so I just really didn't here's the thing. Failure really wasn't an option. And I've said this to all of you kids. I don't ever believe that people are failures. Failure is just feedback. It's what you were trying isn't working. Mm-hmm. So try something else. Mm-hmm. So there was a practical matter. We didn't want to lose the house. I had this beautiful young newborn in my arms. Your dad was oh my goodness, it was so hard for him. And it was really hard for him to be out of work, but nobody was hiring.
Right.
And so, it was just the practical answer. I was a good nurse, especially in ICU. Mm-hmm. So I went back and worked on weekends. I did 12-hour shifts because you got more per hour working nights. So I would work nights, which meant 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I went Saturday night and Sunday nights. And then I would change in the bathroom out of my scrubs and put on a suit and a bow tie.
Oh, man, I would love to see a
picture.
picture.
That? And drive into Philadelphia feeling...
From the hospital.
From the hospital, direct, feeling like a complete fraud. Because who am I talking to people about their money when we were drowning in debt? I had a newborn at home, a very depressed husband, and I didn't know how we were going to survive.
Yeah, let alone other people.
Right.
And it just, first of all, I just have to call it out because everyone who's listening is probably thinking this. Like, that is insane.
Yeah.
Like, that is like David Goggins running 300 miles a day, like crazy. The Sunday all-nighter into a Monday morning in the office is wild to me. So you did that from spring of 1988 to September. What are you feeling like in September? And what happened next?
I will tell you that I was exhausted, conflicted. What a terrible mom I am. Like, how could I do this? I was,
really.
you know, I couldn't get enough of Michael. I just loved him so much.
Yeah.
And yet I felt like, oh my goodness, I got to do something.
Yeah.
If it's to be, it's up to me. That's always been my thing.
Yeah.
And so, you know what? That's basically what it was.
Yeah.
And I think eventually the principal of the firm, Roy, saw me dragging
Yeah.
and pulled me aside, asked me what was going on. And, you know, I was really honest. You know me, I'm just going to give it to him real, and told him. And he said, Patty, here's the thing. You're really good at both, but I think you have a special gift. You can't do both. Focus on the thing that you really want to do longer term.
Yeah.
And so we brainstormed. He said, what can we do? How can I help? And
Yeah.
so, you know, we worked something out. He gave me a draw, you know.
What's a draw?
Oh, a draw is basically where he fronted the cash.
Yeah.
So I don't even remember what it was, like $3,000 a month.
Okay.
But it was enough to pay our mortgage and get some food, right? And I had to earn commissions against the draw. So if, for example, if, you know, I got a commission of $1,000, then that offset that $3,000 that I had gotten that month. If I got a commission of $5,000, which really wasn't happening back then, then that offset the draw, and I would get 2 of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's the way a draw against commission works.
It's kind of like a loan.
It's a loan.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like many loans, it accrued.
Right.
No interest, but it accrued until finally, as a businessman, he had to come to me and said, Patty, I'm really sorry, but I can't continue.
Oh, God, this is just like breaking my heart even to, like, this is hard.
It was really hard.
This is brutal. But it brings me back to, like, am I going to be okay?
Yep.
It makes me so, like, these words and writing this book, it holds so much more weight to me knowing what you went through when you were first starting out and that you got through it. This makes a lot of sense then. So I have this nagging question. Did you feel like you had those 2 girls in the bathroom, right? You're mortified that they say this. And then you have to essentially go, you didn't go backwards, like you didn't quit financial planning and go back to nursing, but you kind of like had to take a sidestep. Was your ego bummed by that at all or anything like that? Or you were just in survival mode?
I was in survival mode and I didn't think about it. I didn't,
Interesting.
You know, I didn't take that thing in as it didn't personify me. I didn't define myself as a nurse or you know, that just is, you know, you just got to figure it out.
Yeah. And it sounds like you like embodied it and knew where you could be and you saw it so that these, you know, going left or right or adding a sidestep or whatever, it could have, you know, knocked you down and stuff, but it wasn't going to demolish you.
Mm-mm. The only thing that got close was when Roy, the principal, had to come to me and stop the draw because we had a mortgage up to 95%.
Mm-hmm.
We had no access to home equity line of credit. We had credit cards, the whole bit, and we had no cash flow, and your dad still wasn't working.
Oh
that almost
leveled you.
It almost did.
So this is actually insane. What happens next? You know, you're going through this period. He stops the draw. You make back the money, right? And then you get an opportunity, an interview from Johnson & Johnson. You're going to be, you know, you get the company car, you get all this stuff. I think you were working in insurance, right?
Well, I was at RTD.
You're at RTD, but you get this opportunity to go off into a different,
Yeah.
more comfortable, right? It was a salaried job.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I mean, again, going back, first of all, I didn't make it up. We were still really struggling.
Okay, yeah.
And so I was just like, okay, this isn't working. I can't work 2 jobs. I don't want to go back to nursing. There was an ad in the Inquirer for Johnson & Johnson. I go to these interviews. I make it 1, 2, 3. I go into the OR to find out what the job is all about, the whole thing. I end up getting the offer. And this offer was so juicy. I got to tell you, it was salary, like double what I was making as a nurse, company car, expenses. I could take people out to lunches. I could be really, it could be really a great gig.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. I went to the person who offered me the job and I said, you know what? I can't do it. And he was shocked. He's like, wait a minute. We actually took you and your husband out to dinner to talk about this. You've been through 11 interviews with J&J.
Yeah.
You're not going to take it? There were 300 people ahead of you. And I said, you know what? I don't know why, but I just feel like I need to keep going as a financial planner.
way.
I'm not kidding you. That's exactly what happened. And the guy, I don't know what has happened to him since. He
probably died.
Yeah,
he probably died. And he's in his grave now.
He was right because it was a ridiculous, I mean, it was, when I think back to it, I'm like, what was I thinking?
Yeah. But you knew.
I wasn't thinking. Again, it comes from here. I don't know why. Call it a God wink. I don't know why I chose make that decision, but that's where we go.
It's so hard when you make a crazy decision like that because it doesn't. I think that's what we're understanding or uncovering, or at least I'm uncovering in this moment, is like it doesn't make sense in the moment. But the only thing that you know for absolute certain is who you are at your fundamental core.
I will tell you, I'd love to tell you that I knew absolutely. I didn't. I was scared to death, Carrie.
But if you were so scared to death, then why wouldn't you choose this very obvious thing?
Because I had the glimmers of hope.
Okay.
Still inside of me, and I knew, just because of experiences with certain clients, the difference that a really good advisor can make in a person's life. And that psychic reward to me was so compelling, probably even more compelling than being in an OR with surgeons and, working at a Fortune 500 company.
You always talk about that gap that Roy kind of pointed out to you of like, this is what financial planning is right now in the 80s, and this is what it really could be. So that coupled with your experience as a nurse and getting pulled off of this case and kind of treated as like almost like a number, where a person to just hand off to the next person, like that. This all is just making so much sense. Like, of course, it's going to fuel you towards this comprehensive type approach to financial planning.
What you're kind of uncovering even for me is, where does this passion come from?
Yeah.
People ask me all the time, Patty, where do you get your energy from?
Right.
Where does this come from?
Yeah.
It's because of, life experiences. That's all.
Yeah. So from that point where you say no to this really juicy offer to starting Key Financial, starting your own business, what happens in between? Can you bridge that gap for me?
I was still trying to figure out my path.
Yeah.
I needed to figure something out,
Yeah.
right? I felt like that way because, to have to sell stuff wasn't really what I was interested in.
Yeah.
So, then I started talking with people locally. Remember, I had a baby at home, right? And doing this long commute, and that was getting old really fast. And so I thought, you know what? Maybe I should look elsewhere. And there were accounting firms and law firms who were beginning to really see this opportunity. And it just made a lot of sense for them to consider doing financial planning as well, but they didn't know how to do it. So I was being recruited by law firm, CPA firm, et cetera, to start financial planning divisions within theirs. And that I thought would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I went back to Roy because I really felt, and I still feel today, that, you know, he really took a chance on me. What in the world were they doing hiring a nurse, right? And they gave me the opportunity, and I felt like I owed it to him to be completely transparent and honest.
Yeah.
And so I went to Roy and I just talked to him like I did with the J&J thing.
Yeah.
And I went back to him. I said, I just want to let you know this is what's happening. He said, Patty, I know you. You shouldn't work for somebody else. And I will tell you that he asked a lot of really good questions, like, what was it that made you want to talk to these firms?
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
Yeah.
Et cetera. And he said, you know what? You don't need to do that. Don't work for somebody else. Why don't you start your own firm? And by the way, sidebar, I should probably tell you, they went through a very short period of time when they were going to be doing only portfolio management,
Yeah.
and they would go to a $1 million minimum. So when he asked, what was it that made you start to look elsewhere? I said, Roy, I'm 28 years old or 29 years old, and you're doing portfolio only with a $1 million minimum. Nobody's going to trust me with that kind of money. And that's not really what I want to do. I really want to do the holistic thing.
Yeah.
I like financial planning. I like wealth management, the taxes, the cash flow, the retirement projections.
Right.
I just always believe that people aren't their money. It's a means to an end.
Right.
That's when he said, don't work for somebody else.
Yeah.
Start your own thing. And he said, we'll support you. I'm like, well, what does that look like? And he said, we'll be your back office. We'll support you, okay, for a cut, of course, but you should start your own thing and do what you really want to do. And that's when Key Financial was born.
Wow. That is wild.
I still don't know what it was in me that thought I could do it.
Yeah. So can you describe to me what those early days were like for you? Paint a picture.
Okay, so it's 1990. There was still some PTSD from the crash.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it was that I thought that I could do this. We had a laundry room. You weren't even born yet, by the way.
Yeah.
And so we moved the washer and dryer down to the basement, and we put a desk in there, and it was me, myself, and I. That's what it was. And, I knew right away that that was not going to be sustainable. So months go by, and, things are still happening. A colleague of mine had gotten laid off, so I started a conversation. And, one thing led to another, and I offered her a job. And I told her, honestly, I said, I can't pay you what you're worth. And I will tell you this, I will make it my mission for us to get to a point where maybe you and I can say, you're overpaid. And years later, it was a decade later, I can honestly say that we got to that point. So she would come, and she got pregnant. We were both pregnant at the same time, had babies.
My God.
We were sitting across from each other in the laundry room, and she would do the plans, and I would be on the phone trying to drum up business. It was crazy. I mean, it was just crazy to think about it.
In the 90s.
Right, exactly. And all I could say was, hey, Barb, don't worry about the baby.
Yeah.
Just bring the baby with you. I'll provide childcare. So we were, once the babies were born, we were both nursing and doing our thing. I got a nanny, and she would take care of the babies, and we would do our work. And by the way, she would come and sleep at the house 2 to 3 nights a week to do her thing. In fact, their family, she and her husband, moved to Washington, D.C., and she still kept coming.
Oh, my God.
So it's amazing. This is why I always say to everybody here, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Tell me what's important to you.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Figure it out.
Because that's been my life.
Was there, I'm kind of pivoting here for a second, but so as a woman in the 90s and 80s and in business and in the financial field, did you ever feel less than because you're a woman? Was that ever a thing?
It's interesting that you bring that up. It was a joke, actually. I mean, I would go to conferences because that's the only way I could learn. Because remember, I was by myself.
Right.
I wasn't with a big company. I wasn't getting any ongoing training. So I had to learn myself and go out of my way to learn whatever was going on. So I would go to these conferences and I could always tell. Because number one, most of the time I was pregnant, right? So these men, it was all men in navy and black suits. And typically I'd be sitting there and they would look at me and they would say, so, who you here with? And I knew instantly they thought I was somebody's assistant, right?
Yeah.
And that was fine. Let them think whatever they wanted to think. It was up to me to prove them wrong.
Yeah. So in other words, you, or at least what I'm hearing is you didn't really even let it faze you.
Nah. No. You know what?
Yeah.
That's the way it was. I wasn't going to change that. That was not my intention. I'm just going to do my thing.
Yeah.
Because it was important. It needed to get done.
So we're going to fast forward a little bit because obviously I want to spend some time about this amazing book that you wrote. Can you talk a little bit about the challenging points while writing this book?
Oh, boy. There were many. So for me, you know, I started with a ghostwriter, and then Forbes gave me another ghostwriter, and it just wasn't working out. And I just knew I got to do this thing myself. Yeah. And so I started from scratch many times to poor Bernadette's chagrin. Here she goes again. But you know what? I just wanted it to reflect reality, and I wanted to talk and speak in words and write in words that people can understand and process. It's kind of like what we do today.
Yeah.
I'm not a person that pontificates. There are certain things that I know work over time. Maybe not every time, but over time. And if we just stick with it.
I think relationships is something that is a huge theme that runs beneath all of the stories in your book. So I went to people in your life and I asked, what's it like to have Patty Brennan as a friend? These are some of the responses that I got. And a lot of them were very long, so I had to take from a few. Mary said, she's always there, ready with advice, laughter, or a witty one-liner to remind me she still got it. Michelle said, when I had COVID, she didn't just send a text. She went to my favorite store and filled my fridge with all of my favorite foods, showing just how thoughtful and generous she is. And her quick wit, unmatched. Bobby said, Patty isn't just our neighbor or a friend. She's like family. Sue said she's the person you want by your side when things get real. And Kathy said she is a selfless friend. I could go on and on. There's so many things that people have said about you as a friend. And so my question to you is, hearing these words, how do the relationships in your life, both personal and professional, shape the way that you've approached writing this book?
Again, you know, I mean, first of all, I can't believe that you called all these people. Thank you for doing that. That was huge. And it's so surreal for me to hear these words. When I think about writing the book, I just wanted to give back. I just wanted to maybe share some things that might make a difference in their lives, in your lives, in everyone's lives. And you know, it's just what we get to do. It's such a privilege to be in you know, other people's lives. And, you know, I laugh all the time. I love to laugh. I love this crew that we have here at Key Financial because it is so much fun. I love being in here. And it's been so much fun to hear that from you as well.
Yeah.
Like, this place is pretty crazy.
It's pretty great. Yeah. It's a pretty awesome place.
Yeah.
You said to me over the years, you said, I don't care about selling books. I literally don't care about selling books. What I want is, can you fill in that blank?
What I want is for people who worry, am I going to be okay? And by the way, is okay enough? People have questions and they don't know where to go to get the answers.
Yeah.
This is a first step. It starts with the process, the strategies, then we get into tactics, and then the third section is the 15 mistakes people make over and over again. So let's just start with a book, and you know what? Take it from there. Some people can do this stuff on their own.
Yeah.
And some people don't want to deal with it, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
Figure out which one you are. Just take the first step. And that's the purpose of the book.
And this is the first step.
Yeah. I don't care about selling. That's not the objective here.
Yeah.
It's really to help people take that first step.
So it's like a tool to you. It's a tool to give
it's
people.
First step.
Yeah.
Take that first step.
Yeah.
You know? And that's the purpose. It's a letter.
Yeah.
It's a letter to the reader. That's all it is.
Could it be a letter to your younger self?
Maybe.
Who knows? Is there anything else that you want people to know? I'm finished with my questions today. Is there anything else that you want people to know about your book?
Well, I think that for me, what I find most rewarding is to hear from the people who have read it. Wow, I normally wouldn't read a book like this. That was really an entertaining read. I got a lot out of it, and I loved it. And for me to hear that after the years it took to put it in writing and get it published is just really rewarding. So it's just to be approachable and make it fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, it doesn't have to be work.
Yeah.
Enjoy
To me, it's like it reads like a Harry Potter book. Like it's just like I think Ken Corbett said, it's a page turner about the most bone dry things. I mean, I kind of think they're pretty boring, but you somehow find this way to like tell these stories and weave in these metaphors and stuff that just like, it's almost like flossing from my brain. Like it just works, and it feels so good to be able to understand these complex things in understandable terms, which is what we always say, right?
Yeah.
But this is really like a summation of that. It's the act of doing exactly that. So I'm really, really impressed by you. I so appreciate you taking the time to tell us a little bit more about your life story, because knowing now what I know about like the depth of those stories, this makes all of the sense in the world why it is so, so powerful. So thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you to everyone who's tuned into this conversation. Patty's book is now available for pre-order. So exciting. It's available on Amazon Prime and Amazon in general. You don't just have to be a Prime member, although I do personally just like very much so suggest you do that. It's available on Prime for pre-order right now, and you can order it to be delivered to your house on November 26th, right? November 26th.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So get the book. That's all I can say. And thanks for tuning in. Feel free to like, subscribe, and share this episode with the people that you love. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.